Archangel Chronicles 3, Chapter 1, The Gathering by Raymond Collodi, copyright 2026, all rights reserved.
Cold came the dawn of the mountain stone, frost on the eagle's wing. Targitus stood where the high winds moaned and heard the wild birds sing.
Arctos watched with a young man's grief as the great hawk rose to fly.
The mountains choose, the old man said, and no hand owns the sky.
The rose are gathering once again, the stars burn bright above. Old companions hear the call of memory and love. From the steppes to Galilee, from Alexander's flame,
The world begins to tremble now at the whisper of his name.
Loukia treed by the winter fire, the Jordan cold and gray. The prophet crying beside the flood, prepare the holy way.
And there among the waiting crowds, a man stood in the light. A child, they crossed the world to God, had risen in his might.
The roads are gathering once again.
Dawn came cold upon the high grasslands. A silver frost still clung to the mountain stones where the shadows had not yet retreated, and the wind carried the scent of pine, snowmelt, and horses. Above the eastern ridges, the sky had begun to pale from iron gray into bands of gold and rose. Targitus stood beside his horse, one gloved hand resting upon the hooded eagle perched on his arm. Time had thickened him. The lean, restless Egyptian youth and later adopted Scythian, who had once ridden beneath endless skies with a league of star-bearers, had become something harder and steadier now. Lines weathered his brow and the corners of his eyes. Threads of silver touched the dark braid hanging over one shoulder. The years had not diminished him. They had carved him. Beside him stood his eldest son. This boy, perhaps 14 winters old, was tall already, although not yet filled into the breadth of his shoulders. He wore a wolfskin mantle over riding leathers and carried himself with the awkward seriousness of one trying very hard to become a man before his time. His name was Arctos. And this morning, for the first time, his father had brought him alone into the high mountains. Far below them, hidden among the valleys and rivers, lay the encampments of the steppe peoples. Smoke rose faintly in the distance from the winter hearths, but here only the mountains endured. Targitus looked out over the cliffs. "This is high enough," he said quietly. Arctos nodded. He tried to sound calm. "Will she return?" Targitus glanced down at the hooded eagle on his arm. "No." The boy frowned slightly. "But she knows us." "She does," said Targitus. "That is why she must leave." For a moment neither spoke. Only the wind moved between them. The eagle shifted upon Targitus' arm, powerful talons tightening against the leather bracer. Even hooded, she sensed the heights around her. Arctos looked at the bird with poorly concealed sorrow. He had raised her from a balapan, a down-covered eaglet taken from a cliff nest years ago. He had fed her strips of bear meat from his own hand. He had trained her across the steppes beneath his father's stern instruction. She had hunted fox and wolf alongside him. To release her now felt like losing part of himself. Targitus seemed to understand without looking at him. My eagle master told me the same thing when I freed my first eagle, he said. Arctos looked up, surprised. You never spoke of this. Targitus was quiet for a long moment. He was not an easy man. Were you afraid of him? Targitus gave the faintest hint of a smile. Yes. The boy absorbed this silently. Targitus slowly removed the hood from the eagle's head. Golden eyes flashed open instantly, fierce, ancient, and fully alive. The bird lifted her wings slightly against the wind. Arctos' voice wavered. She may not survive the winter alone. Targitus nodded once. That is true. Then why release her? The older man fully turned towards his son, because some things were not taught in words. The eagle was never yours, he said softly. You were only entrusted to walk beside her for a time. The boy lowered his eyes. Targitus stepped toward the eagle at the edge of the cliffs. The mountains opened before them in vast descending waves of stone and forest and cloud shadow. Far below, rivers flashed silver in the morning light. The eagle spread her wings now, sensing freedom. Targitus closed his eyes briefly, and for just a heartbeat, memory crossed his face. The deserts, the caravan roads, the Star over Bethlehem, Adam, Sophia, Loukia's songs beside distant fires, the Child of Light. So many gone now, so many roads behind him. He opened his eyes and held out his arm. The eagle leapt. Massive wings thundered once, twice, catching the mountain wind. She dipped sharply into the abyss below the cliffs, vanishing so suddenly Arctos gasped in alarm. Then she rose, higher and higher still, circling once above them. The first rays of the sun struck her wings, turning them briefly to gold. Then she cried out, a wild, piercing sound that echoed across the mountains like something older than language itself, and she flew east toward the dream. Arctos watched until she disappeared. Beside him, Targitus stood unmoving, his eyes fixed upon the horizon. After a long silence, the boy spoke quietly. What happens now? Targitus breathed deeply of the cold air. Now, he said, we begin searching for another Balapan. The boy nodded slowly, then after hesitation, how will we find one? At this, Targitus finally smiled. A rare thing, weathered but warm. We do not find them, he said. The mountains decide. By the time Targitus and Arctos descended from the heights, the sun had passed its noon arc, and the world glowed with the pale glow of winter afternoon. The camp lay in the shelter of a long valley where the mountains softened into rolling uplands streaked with pine and juniper. Smoke rose low from felt tents and timber lodges ringed by horse corrals. Children's laughter drifted faintly on the wind, mingling with the distant sounds of hammers, dogs, and the murmuring of many lives gathered beneath the open sky. A young eagle rode upon Arctos' arm. She was still lean from training, feathers dark and burnished, her fierce amber eyes constantly moving. A leather hood covered her head, though every movement of her talons betrayed restless strength. Unlike the great eagle they had released into the mountains months before, this one was younger still, newly taken from the cliffs at the turning of the spring. A true Balapan, Arctos carried her with quiet pride. Targitus noticed it, but said nothing. As they approached the outer fires, riders and herdsmen lifted hands in greeting. Several younger boys gathered excitedly about Arctos, staring at the eagle with open admiration. "You found one. Did she fight? Did you climb the black cliffs?" Arctos tried to answer with dignity. Although his grin betrayed him, Targitus left him to it. He dismounted slowly near the largest of the tents, loosening his horse's reins. Before he could call out, the tent flap opened and Loukia emerged into the cold light. For a moment the years vanished from him. She had changed, as all of them had changed. Time had deepened rather than diminished her beauty. The wild sorrow that had once haunted the singer-poet of the League of Star-Bearers had long ago softened into something steadier, a quiet strength like music remembered after grief. Silver glimmered faintly upon the copper waves of her hair, braided with beads of bronze and river shells. Her eyes, still luminous and searching, found him immediately and smiled. Two girls burst from behind her. "Father!" The younger of the two nearly collided with Targitus as he hurled herself against him. He caught her instinctively, lifting her high as she laughed. The elder daughter followed more slowly, trying to maintain dignity before failing entirely and embracing him around the waist. Arctos approached with the eagle carefully balanced upon his arm. Loukia's eyes widened in an expression of wonder. "So," she said softly, "the mountains judged him worthy." Arctos straightened at once beneath the praise. "They did," said Targitus with pride in his voice. Loukia stepped close and touched the bird gently upon the breast feathers. "And did they judge my son worthy as well?" At this, Targitus laughed quietly beneath his breath. Arctos groaned, "Mother," but Loukia only smiled and kissed his brow. "You have your father's eyes now," she said. Something about this seemed to unsettle the boy more than climbing cliffs or handling eagles, and he turned away quickly to hide it. Targitus watched them all in silence. For one brief moment, standing amid the smoke of hearth fires and the laughter of his children, he felt something he had once believed impossible for himself: peace. But Loukia's expression changed, subtly at first. The warmth in her face remained, yet something older stirred beneath it now, a stillness, a listening. Targitus knew that look. His own smile faded. What is it? The wind moved softly through the camp. Loukia glanced toward the western horizon before answering. "Last night," she said quietly, "I dreamt of him again." Silence settled between them, and even the children seemed to feel it. Arctos lowered the eagle slightly upon his arm. Loukia continued, "I dreamt of him leaving Nazareth, where we last saw him. As a youth, he was a man now, tall and strong. I saw the Jordan River beneath a gray sky, crowds gathering upon its banks. The air trembled as though the earth itself were waiting." Her voice had taken on that distant cadence Targitus remembered from long ago, when songs came to her unbidden beside desert fires. I saw Johanan, the wilderness prophet, older now, fierce as before. He stood in the river, calling the people to repentance. Targitus listened without speaking, and then her eyes unfocused slightly. He came. No name was needed. A long silence followed. When I awoke, Loukia said, I knew the years of waiting are ending. The child of light, who is now a man, is prepared to reveal himself to the world. Targitus felt the old stirring deep within him then, like embers long ago buried beneath ash. He remembered the roads, the star, Bethlehem, the flight and the rescue, the world shifting once more. Loukia looked directly at him now, and there is more. Targitus returned her gaze and grasped her hands. We have a visitor. Something in her tone made the air suddenly colder. Who? But before she could answer, the children fell silent. All around them, the noises of the camp seemed to dim. Targitus turned. A solitary figure stood near the edge of the tents. No one had seen him approach. He wore traveling robes, pale as gray as winter ash, bound with a weathered leather girdle. Dust clung to his sandals as though he had crossed many roads. His face was neither young nor old, beautiful and terrible all at once, and not in the manner of kings or warriors, but something like shaped before such things existed. His eyes met Targitus, and memory struck like lightning. His mind flashed back to visions of deserts, Adam's passage through the high mountain pass, the voice beside the fire, the presence that carried eternity like hidden flame. Raphael. Arctos stared in confusion. The younger girls instinctively moved closer to their mother. Targitus stepped forward slowly. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Raphael bowed his head slightly. Targitus. The older Eaglemaster felt suddenly as he had decades ago, young, uncertain, standing out once more at the edge of mysteries far greater than himself. You have come back, Targitus said quietly. Raphael's gaze drifted briefly toward the western sky. The hour approaches. The words carried a weight beyond themselves. Loukia came to stand beside her husband. Raphael looked upon her kindly. Singer, voice of the star-bearers. She lowered her head slightly in reverence. Then the messenger's eyes turned to Targitus. You must go south again. Targitus felt his breath tighten. To Judea. Raphael nodded once. The roads are gathering. It was an answer and not an answer. The child is a man. He has begun his awakening to the burden he carries. Others are being called, old companions, old witnesses. For a heartbeat, Targitus saw them all again. Adam, Sophia, Balthazar, Gondophares, Axia, the long caravans beneath the stars. Will there be danger? He asked. Raphael's expression became unreadable. There has always been danger. The wind stirred the pale folds of his robe, but the shadow that stirred in Bethlehem is not forgotten. The enemy will stir. There will be resistance. At this, Loukia's face darkened slightly with remembered sorrow. Targitus took a slow breath. When do we leave? Raphael looked at him for a very long moment. As soon as the queen hears what must be spoken. Then he stepped backward, not hurriedly, not dramatically, but simply stepping away toward the edge of the camp where the smoke and the winter light drifted together. A rider passed between the tents for only an instant, and when the path cleared again, Raphael was gone. Arctos looked around in astonishment. Where? But Targitus raised a hand gently. He already knew no answer would come. Silence lingered after the messenger's departure. Then Loukia touched Targitus lightly upon the arm. Her voice was quiet now. We must go see the queen. Targitus looked toward the heart of the encampment, where the great standard of the queen stirred above the winter tents, the silver wolf beneath the star-forged crown. She who is worthy of armor, Loukia said softly. She must hear these things. Far above them, somewhere beyond sight among the mountain heights, an eagle cried against the coming dusk. Once every 3 years, during the verdant abundance of the endless plains of the steppes, the Massagetes host gathers where the mountains and great rivers meet the inhospitable sea. Since the union of their queen with the Sarmatian prince Arcelian, the gathering swelled to twice its original size, with Sarmatian lancers joining the revelry. The nomadic clans, with their herds, wagons, and felt tents, gathered and formed a temporary city. Merchants, artisans, and goldsmiths from far and wide came to trade, barter, feast, and sing. At night, the light of thousands of campfires speckled the hillsides, their winking fires in the distance rivaling the Milky Way overhead in the endless skies. The heart of the encampment spread across the valley floor like a living tapestry of felt, leather, smoke, and motion. Tall banners snapped in the mountain wind above rings of horse corrals and long fire trenches. Warriors moved among herds of hardy steppe horses. Traders bartered beside wagons laden with furs, iron, bronzework, and eastern silks, brought along forgotten trails from Parthia and beyond. Wine flowed freely in the pop-up taverns. Targitus and his family crossed through the camp. People stepped aside respectfully, not merely for him, but for both of them, the legendary old Eagle Master and the mystical Muse. The names of the League of Starbearers had become legend among these people now. Children whispered when Loukia passed. Older warriors touched fist to breast for Targitus. Some remembered the years when he and Axia had ridden together beneath blood-red skies against enemies from east and west alike, and when Targitus, seeing through the eagle's eye, had brought warning of approaching enemies. Their bards sang these tales around campfires, crackling in the dark nights of the steppes. Ahead of them, near the central riding grounds, a great crowd had gathered. The sharp thunder of hooves rolled across the valley. Arctos' younger sisters immediately broke into excited whispers and hurried ahead. Targitus smiled faintly. "The lances," one of them said breathlessly. "They're doing the lance trials." The riding field stretched wide beneath the open sky, marked by rows of carved posts, hanging rings, wicker targets, and narrow lanes lined with mounted warriors. Hundreds had gathered to watch. At the far end of the field sat Axia. Even seated, she seemed carved from command itself. Age had touched her more visibly than Targitus. Silver threaded her long auburn hair now, braided with bronze rings and wolf teeth. Fine lines marked the corners of her eyes and mouth. But none of it diminished her presence. If anything, sorrow and years had refined it into something harder, and more regal. She wore dark-scaled armor beneath a mantle of white wolf fur. Across her shoulders rested the sky metal circlet she had once surrendered before the child in Bethlehem, now worn not as a crown of conquest, but as a burden accepted. Beside her stood her son, Alderan, prince of the Roxolani, Sarmatian, and Massagetæ hosts, the heir to the crown of these Scythian peoples. He had his mother's height and the broad shoulders of Arsalian. His hair, dark with faint bronze undertones, hung loose from behind him in warrior braids. Though perhaps 30 winters old now, there remained something youthful in the intensity of his gaze, a fierce hunger for mastery not yet dulled by age. At that moment, he vaulted into the saddle of a black-stepped stallion in one fluid movement. The crowd roared approval. Arctos stopped beside his father, eyes fixed upon the field. "He rides like his noble father, Arsalian," he murmured. Targitus nodded once. "Yes." A horn sounded. 3 mounted Massagetæ riders exploded across the field at full gallop, loosening arrows almost immediately. Their short composite bows bent like crescent moons. Targets shattered in rapid succession as the riders twisted sideways from their saddles with impossible balance, firing backwards and beneath the necks of their horses. The crowd roared its approval. Then Alderan lowered his lance. The stallion surged forward. Unlike the others, he did not weave or feint. He rode straight as a spear cast by the gods themselves. The long two-handed lance remained perfectly level as the horse thundered down the lane, as Alderan controlled his mount with his knees. A suspended bronze ring swung violently in the wind. At full gallop, Alderan drove the lance cleanly through its center without slowing. The crown erupted, but he did not stop. A second target appeared, a wicker shield mounted upon a turning post. Alderan released the shattered lance shaft and drew another from a waiting attendant as he passed. The movement was seamless. He arched his back, head touching his horse's rump, and then thrust his torso forward like a human catapult, hurling the second lance with both hands as his chest came to rest on his horse's neck. The weapon struck with brutal force, punching entirely through the shield and knocking the target spinning into the dust. Targitus gave a low grunt of approval. Loukia smiled softly beside him. He has become everything Arsalian hoped. For just a moment, grief passed quietly across Axia's face as she watched her son rein in the stallion. Targitus saw it. Others might not have, but he knew her too long. Arsalian's absence lingered beside her still, invisible as a phantom rider. Years earlier, the Parthians had come again, one final attempt to reclaim the northern crossings. Arsalian had led the defense himself. The invaders had been broken and driven south, but Arsalian had not returned. Some said he slew 3 enemy nobles after taking a spear through the side. Others claimed he died standing beside his horse beneath a rain of arrows. Axia never spoke publicly of how he fell, only that he died with his face toward the enemy. There was much lamentation amongst the horse warriors of both nations. A period of mourning followed, and a great kurgan was erected, entombing his body and treasures for the afterlife. The horsemen cleared the field as Alderan approached his mother. Only then did Axia finally notice Targitus and Loukia standing among the gathered spectators. For a heartbeat, surprise touched her stern features, then genuine warmth. She rose immediately. Targitus, our Eagle Master. Her voice carried across the field like iron wrapped in velvet. The crowd parted at once as the old companions approached one another. Axia clasped Targitus forearm to forearm in the old warrior fashion. "You took long enough returning from the mountains," she said, "and you have reigned gloriously as queen while I was gone." At this, one corner of her mouth curved slightly. An accident, no doubt. Loukia embraced her next. There were no words between them at first, only the quiet understanding of women who had crossed deserts, wars, and seen miracles together. Then Axia looked upon Arctos and the younger girls. "So these are the children who steal your strength and sleep." "They steal mostly food," Targitus replied gravely. The girls laughed. Alderan approached them, removing his riding gloves. He bowed respectfully first to Loukia, Hiera Musa, then to Targitus, Eagle Master. Targitus studied him carefully. The years vanished again. For an instant he had a vision of Arsalian standing there, noble, proud, dangerous, laughing beside campfires beneath eastern stars. But Alderan's eyes were gentler than his father's had been. "Your lance work grows less embarrassing," Targitus said. Alderan grinned openly at that. "I have worked very hard to disappoint you less." Before Targitus could answer, Axia's expression changed. She had noticed it now. The stillness in Loukia, the gravity in Targitus's eyes, the old currents moving again beneath the surface of the world. Her voice lowered. "What has happened?" The wind swept across the riding field, stirring banners overhead. Loukia and Targitus exchanged a glance. Then Loukia spoke quietly. "We have received a messenger." Axia's face became utterly still. "A messenger," she repeated. Targitus nodded once. Raphael, the torchbearer, came to the camp. Even Alderan seemed to feel the weight of the name, though he had never seen the messenger himself. Axia slowly sat back down. All warmth faded from her expression now, replaced by the calm focus of a ruler preparing for war. "What did he say?" Targitus looked toward the southern horizon beyond the mountains. "He said the roads are gathering again." Loukia's voice followed softly. "And that child of light, now a man, is beginning his awakening." Silence spread among them. Only the distant sounds of horses and winter wind remained. At last, Axia spoke. "So," her eyes darkened with memory, "after all these years." Targitus looked at her steadily. "Yes." The queen rose once more. Around them the games and celebrations of the camp swirled, unaware that the world had begun shifting beneath them again. Axia turned towards the great southern roads beyond the mountains. Then she said quietly, "Prepare the riders." Night had settled over Alexandria like a veil of deep blue silk. Beyond the harbors, the Pharos burned against the darkness, a towering pillar of fire and polished bronze, casting its light across the restless Mediterranean. Ships from every corner of the known world crowded the docks below. Roman grain barges, Arab dhows, Nubian rivercraft, Indian vessels with painted eyes upon their prows. The air smelled of salt, cedar resin, lamp oil, and distant spices carried from the east. Alexandria had grown older, and so had the men who walked its marble streets. Balthazar rode through the canopic way beneath rows of towering columns gleaming gold beneath torchlight. Though age had bent him slightly, there still remained an unmistakable majesty about him. His beard, once black as obsidian, had turned silver white, braided in the Ascomite fashion with rings of ivory and gold. Fine robes of dark indigo hung beneath a heavy traveling coat embroidered with the sigils of his kingdom. People still turned to stare when he passed, some out of awe, some out of memory, for the king of Aksum had become a legend in many lands. He passed scholars arguing beside the temple courtyards, Roman officials carried in litters, priests of Isis moving with shaven heads through incense smoke, and merchants crying their wares in 20 languages. Yet Balthazar scarcely noticed any of it. His thoughts remained upon the dream that had come to him weeks earlier beneath the high stars of Aksum. The same dream, the same stirring, the same sense that the world itself had begun holding its breath once more. At last he reached the harbor district near the eastern warehouses. There, among sprawling courtyards filled with stacked amphorae and spice crates from India, stood a large stone villa overlooking the sea. This was Theron's house, or rather, Theron's kingdom. The former impresario, producer of spectacles, spy master, and wanderer, had become something stranger with age, a prince without a title, whose influence moved invisibly through trade routes stretching from Britannia to India. Caravans answered to him, captains trusted him, harbor masters feared disappointing him, and yet the old fox now preferred simple linen robes and plain sandals. Balthazar entered the villa without ceremony. Servants bowed low and immediately led him inward through shaded courtyards lined with palms and reflecting pools. The sound of quiet conversation drifted from an open terrace overlooking the moonlit harbor. Theron rose first as Balthazar entered. Age had thinned him, though not weakened him. His once dark hair had receded entirely now, leaving his features severe beneath the lantern light, but his eyes remained sharp as blades. "Your Majesty," Theron said dryly, bowing slightly. Balthazar snorted softly. "If you call me that again, I shall have you thrown into your own harbor." Theron smiled faintly. "It is good to see that age has improved neither your humility nor your temper." The two men embraced. Then Balthazar turned toward the third figure seated near the terrace, overlooking the sea. For a moment, emotion crossed even his weathered face. "Old friend!" Gondophares rose slowly. Time had changed him most of all. The former king who had once journeyed west in splendor beneath banners and elephants now wore the simple robes of a scholar. His long white beard flowed almost to his chest. Deep lines marked his face like riverbeds carved through stone, yet his eyes remained luminous and deeply alive. Peace surrounded him now, not the peace of a life of ease, but the peace of one who had suffered, waited, and endured long enough to turn ambition into wisdom. "Balthazar," he said softly. The two old kings embraced beneath the sound of distant surf. For a time they sat together in silence while servants poured wine and lit fresh lamps. Far below them, Alexandria shimmered beneath the stars. Finally, Balthazar spoke. "When I received your summons, I knew." Gondophares nodded slowly. "Yes." Theron leaned back against the marble railing. "The currents are moving again," he murmured. Balthazar studied them both carefully. "What do you know?" For a moment none answered. Then Theron sighed quietly. "There is sorrow first." The mood upon the terrace darkened. Balthazar lowered his cup. Theron's gaze drifted toward the sea. "Scarus is dead." The words settled heavily into the night air. Balthazar closed his eyes briefly. The old Roman soldier, the gruff guardian, the sword that had once walked beside miracles. "How?" he asked softly. "Age," Theron replied. "A fever in winter. Quiet, peaceful." A faint smile touched his mouth. He spent his last years cursing physicians and pretending not to enjoy old Camilla's company. Even Gondophares smiled faintly at that. Theron continued more quietly. He was buried overlooking the sea. Camilla visits often. Silence followed. Then Balthazar asked the question already haunting him. "And Sophia?" At this, Theron's expression shifted. Something unsettled passed between his eyes. "We do not know." Balthazar frowned. Theron folded his hands slowly. "She and Adam disappeared nearly 3 years ago." Gondophares looked toward him carefully. "They vanished during their travels in the eastern deserts," Theron continued. "One caravan claimed they entered ancient ruins beneath the cliffs beyond Petra. Another said they were seen traveling north towards Syria. After that," he shook his head once, "nothing." The sea wind stirred the lamps. Balthazar sat very still. "And Camilla?" he asked. Theron's face softened unexpectedly. "She misses Sophia terribly." For the first time, the calculating merchant prince vanished, and the weary old man beneath emerged. "She still keeps Sophia's rooms untouched whenever she visits Alexandria." A faint smile touched him. "She complains constantly that Sophia has abandoned her." He paused again. "But every evening she lights a lamp by the window facing east." Balthazar looked away. "And waits," Theron said quietly. Gondophares finally spoke then. "She is right to wait." The others turned towards him. The old Indo-Parthian king sat gazing toward the stars beyond the harbor. "When Mara still lived," he said softly, "word reached us from those who watched over the Holy Family in Egypt." His eyes grew distant. "I remained near them for years after Bethlehem, not openly, never intruding, only watching from afar as the child grew." Balthazar listened intently. "There was power around him even then," Gondophares whispered. "Not displayed, hidden, like fire beneath the earth." The lamps flickered in the sea breeze. After they returned to Nazareth, the reports became fewer. Quiet years, waiting years. He turned slowly toward them. But now the silence is ending. Even Theron straightened slightly. Gondophares' voice lowered. "The child is no longer a child." Below them, waves crashed faintly against Alexandria's breakwaters. "He stands now upon the edge of his revealing." The words seemed to reverberate through all the years between Bethlehem and now. Balthazar felt suddenly as though he stood once more beneath the star. His mind went back to the desert wind, the songs, the manger, Mary's eyes. Gondophares continued, I've heard rumors from Judea, a prophet in the wilderness calling Israel to repentance, crowds gathering near the Jordan. Loukia's dream echoed invisibly across the world. And I believe, Gondophares said quietly, he is preparing himself. Theron stared into the darkness. Then the world is about to change again. No, Gondophares replied gently. The world is already changed. A long silence followed. At last Balthazar spoke. What would you have us do? The old king looked at both remaining star-bearers. Prepare yourselves. The harbor fires flickered below like fallen stars. The roads that once brought us together are awakening again. His eyes lifted towards the heavens, and before many years pass, every throne, every temple, and empire beneath these stars will tremble because of the child we once carried gifts to in Bethlehem.
Cold came the dawn on the mountain stone, frost on the eagle's wing. Targitus stood where the high winds moaned and heard the wild birds sing.
Arctos watched with a young man's grief as the great hawk rose to fly.
The mountains choose, the old man said, and no hand owns the sky.
The rows are gathering once again. The stars burn bright above. Old companions hear the call of memory and love. From the steppes to Galilee, from Alexandria's flame,
The world begins to tremble now at the whisper of his name.
Loukia, dreamed by the winter file, the Jordan cold and gray. A prophet crying beside the flood, prepare the holy way.
And there among the waiting crowd, a man stood in the light. A child, they crossed the world to God, had risen in his might.
The roads are gathering once again. The winds of heaven stir. Kings and wanderers awake at last to songs they once had heard. The eagle circled toward the dawn. The rider southward ride.
For something older than empire walks now at mankind's side.
Raphael came in ash gray robes, silent as falling snow. The hour comes, the messenger said, the southern roads now glow.
Axia raised her wolf-crowned head, Alderon took his lance, and campfires burned beneath the stars across the endless plain.
By the harbor fires, old kings drank wine in woes decay. Balthazar and Gondophares watched the ancient world sway.
Scarra sleeps beside the sea, Sophia walks unseen, yet still the old star-bearers felt the turning of the dream.
The roads are gathering once again, though many now are gone.
The child beneath the Bethlehem star has risen with the dawn. And every throne and temple, wall, each empire built by men, will shake before calls you each by name.
Music for Chapter 1. The Roads Are Gathering. Lyrics by Raymond Collotti. Music and voices by Marika A.I. From Epidemic Sound. The Greatest Quest by Adriel Fair. Lost Empire by David Celeste. Small Mysteries by Lee Monty. Ashfall by Joe Windrini. Abandoned Abbey by Ludwig Moulin. Legacy of Valor by Christopher Mo Ditlevson. Find My Boy and Bring Him Home by Bonnie Grace. Hail Mary by Edgar Hopp. In Septiternum by David Celeste. Uncharted Land by Helmut Schenkner. Archangel Chronicles 3, copyright 2026, by Raymond Collotti, all rights reserved.